readers how to discuss politics without destroying the 2018 and 2019 holidays. So it was around Thanksgiving. After that, she consulted on the development of the Cli-Mate bot for the David Suzuki Foundation to improve conversations about climate change. Most recently, Dr. Tamerius developed a motivational interviewing chatbot for the New York Times to teach readers how to talk with people who are hesitant about getting the COVID vaccine. The bot is currently being distributed by Kaiser to millions of vaccinated patients in the hope they will engage more productively with family members who are reluctant to get vaccinated. She is currently working on a second motivational interviewing chatbot to teach people how to talk with loved ones who believe vaccine conspiracies. Her work is so relevant to our work in peace building. So Karin, welcome, and I'll pass over the floor to you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. I appreciate it. Good morning, everybody. It's great to be here. This is my first time giving a talk on bots, so I want you to bear with me a little bit. I'm going to ask you to give me questions if there are things that aren't obvious, because I've kind of made some assumptions of what you do and don't know. I'm going to pull up now my presentation slides. Let's see. Put it into present mode. So this is the art of chat, using chatbots to teach dialogue skills. And Lisa gave me a fabulous introduction. Thank you. The Smart Politics, like she said, is a progressive organization that teaches people how to have conversations across difference. The overview for this presentation is mostly we're going to be talking about, like, we're going to be doing an actual demonstration, and then you're going to have a lot of time to ask questions. But we're going to cover several things. We're going to cover what is a chatbot, for those of you who aren't familiar with the concept at all. Second, how can we use chatbots in dialogue work? Third, the demonstration. And then one of the things that I think is really important for people who are thinking about this is, what is the development process involved? If you're a nonprofit organization and you're working in this field, how can you go about bringing a chatbot into your program of education? And then finally, kind of a look at some of the advantages and disadvantages of using chatbots to help you decide if chatbots are actually right for your organization. So first, what is a chatbot? Let's start with what a chatbot isn't. It's not a robot. It usually isn't AI based, although there are some really sophisticated ones that are AI based. At this point, for our purposes, there's absolutely no need for artificial intelligence, and it is not high tech in the least. Like, this is kind of programming 101. In fact, my teenagers have told me that they could program the chatbot themselves, given enough time and resources. So what is a chatbot? Chances are you've actually seen a chatbot, even if you didn't know what it was. This image here is a classic example of a chatbot we encounter every day in the marketplace. If you are in the digital world, chances are you're having conversations with automated programs where there are standardized inputs and standardized responses. It's not that different from getting on a telephone where you get choices in a menu, a numerical menu, where they said, you know, choose one. If you would like to proceed in English, choose two. If you would like to reschedule your appointment. And so you're presented with a menu of options, you give a response, and then the program spits out an answer. So the components that every chatbot has, it's fundamentally a software application. It is a text-based conversational tool, and it's an automated alternative to person-to-person interaction. And when you're wondering, how does one of these simple chatbots work? It basically is just a script. I don't know if you did any of those choose your own adventure books as a kid. I used to do those. I love those. But basically, you have a question, and then you got to choose a number of different options. So the heart of a chatbot is a branching script where there's an initial query, and then the user gets to choose from a menu of choices, and then the bot responds depending on what the user chooses. So, how can chatbots be used in dialogue work? The key with chatbots for dialogue is that you take the basic menu idea that, for example, we see used in the Domino's chatbot, and we put an extra layer of teaching. So first of all, to make that happen, the chatbot doesn't focus on things like pizzas. It focuses on challenging topics. So that could be something like COVID. That could be something like, talking about abortion or gun control or climate. But you choose something where actually having a real conversation is quite difficult. Second of all, chatbots for dialogue tend to be emotional and kind of irritable. So when an organization, a business is programming a chatbot, they try to make it as non-reactive as possible. One of the advantages of a chatbot is that, unlike a human being, it doesn't respond in an emotional fashion. But for our purposes, we want chatbots to simulate human interaction as much as possible. So we want our chatbot to be emotional. And it's one of the reasons that my initial chatbot for the New York Times was called the Angry Uncle Bot, because the idea was that you didn't want to make the uncle angry. And then the next thing is the chatbots we use in dialogue basically teach users through two methods. First of all, through trial and error, which those of us in the dialogue world know is the best way to teach people. We're always trying to get them to do role plays, because as useful as it is to tell people how to have better conversations, if they're not actually out there practicing, they're not going to internalize the skills. So the beauty of the chatbot is it lets people practice having conversations, and it gives them an opportunity to make mistakes and learn from their mistakes. And then we layer on top of that didactic exposition, which allows them to understand why the mistakes they're making are mistakes. So actually, most of the explanation is after the fact, not up front. So you don't tell people how to have a conversation, you let them discover how to have a conversation through going through the process. All right, let's move to the demonstration, because that is the part that's most fun. Like I said, the first bot I did was for the New York Times. And what I'm going to switch my screen sharing right now, go to a share of the actual live bot. So this is what it looked like when it originally appeared in the New York Times. And it came with a little bit of exposition up front to kind of introduce people to what they were going to be experiencing. Obviously, people this was a new thing, and they didn't know what was going to happen. But the exposition was very short, just to prepare people to engage. And then it immediately went into the opening. And as you can see, the opening was very short. Hey, it's the angry uncle bot. I have lots of opinions. What kind of uncle bot do you want to chat with? In this case, and this will be important for those of you who are working with communities where there are people on two sides of an issue. We had to set it up front where people made a choice about what side of the issue they were on. So we had people divide themselves up front into liberals or conservatives, and that actually meant basically creating two separate scripts, which was very time consuming, but worth it. I'm going to go ahead and choose the liberal one for us to start with. So you can see the interface looks very much like, if you're doing a messaging chat. And but the difference is you don't get to type in the answers. You have to choose between what's available. And the question is it going to work? This was what we were concerned about. Okay, so I'm going to stop the share for a second and see, Lisa or Nick, do you have the backup?
I have the backup, so let me quickly share my
Fabulous. Screen. Sorry, folks.
Okay. So were you picking the top or the bottom, Dr. Tamerius?
I was picking the top.
Okay.
There we go. So, so what happens here is I'm more liberal, and so once you choose that, the bot responds with a provocative statement. Here, great, well, let me tell you something. Trump has been great for America. Just look at the economy, it's booming. At that point, the user is given the possibility of giving one of three responses. Trump's been good for the rich. The job numbers are misleading. How are you doing financially? And the idea here is for the user to try to think about what is the emotional impact that their response is going to have on the user. So Nick, go ahead and choose one of those responses. Choose one of the provocative ones.
Okay.
So the person got kind of defensive about Trump, and that led the liberal person the angry uncle was very positive about Trump. That triggered the liberal to get a little defensive and go after the facts. So, and they said the job numbers are misleading, and that caused the uncle bot to respond with, well, that's just fake news. So one of the things that's important in this case is communicating that facts and figures often aren't a productive strategy in a dialogue. So this is the point where I provide a certain amount of exposition that lets the person know that this particular answer didn't move the dialogue forward. So I explain why, that this is going to turn the conversation into a debate over facts and figures. And that's a problem because people tend not to be persuaded by contrary evidence and may even end up believing more strongly in their original position. So try this response instead. So how are you doing financially? Good choice. And now it explains why this is a better choice in the dialogue. The goal at this point is to start a conversation. The easiest way to do this is by asking questions. And then it provides a little exposition on why questions are a better response. So let's go trying to, okay. So, can you scroll up a little bit? Right, so, okay. So what we're getting now from the angry uncle is they're actually kind of opening up a little bit in response to the question. But they're still being a little argumentative, which is one of the things that you're trying to get the bot to do. Like, you don't want your bot to be super easy to talk with, because you want to simulate not just a realistic situation, but a realistic, challenging situation. And to some extent, I find it helpful to go a little overboard. People, when they're thinking about doing dialogues, often imagine like the worst case scenario, or maybe the worst experience they've had. And that tends to stop them from engaging productively or predispose them to engage in a negative way. So you'll notice that even though the bot starts to respond in a productive way about their experience, they then quickly shift to a more defensive stance. But things would have been worse under Hillary. So that then puts the liberal in the position of having to choose, where are they going to follow that negative tone or respond in a more productive manner. And again, we're given choices. Let's try, why are you still, the first one, why are you still talking about Hillary? So this is probably the most common response you get in an actual conversation. And because it reflects, and I usually try to do that, even though there's usually one response, which is the correct response, one response that is the most common response that people give, and one response that is kind of an obvious problematic one that captures maybe what you really want to say in those conversations. So let's see. So another explanation about why this is problematic, and then directed to talking about a better alternative. I think, Nick, what I'd like to do is kind of fast forward through this. So go through and choose several right answers.
So I'm being quizzed right now. I want the
You're
right
being
answer.
quizzed. Let's see if you get it right. And one of the things about this is you can see it takes a little while to go through. And one of the things I went back and forth with the New York Times about was how long it would be. And all of, with the scripts I've done with the New York Times over and over again, they were just like, it has to be shorter. It has to be shorter. And so making things up, you can stop there. I think that's the end, right? Yeah. Okay. So at the conclusion, you have a chance to kind of summarize what has been said up to this point, and take all of the educational messages from each of like the decision points and provide it in a summary form. And at this point, people are actually ready to absorb this information because they've been through it. And so this is the point at which I actually introduce the dialogue model that I taught, which is the change conversation cycle, which is a 5-step process where you begin by asking questions, listening to the answers, and asking clarifying questions, reflecting back what you've heard, finding something to agree on, and then sharing a story that is designed to kind of broaden the other person's perspective a little bit, but never take them on in an adversarial way. So one thing that I find is people get to the end here, they read this model, and then they want to go back through the bot. So it's kind of interesting because in a lot of teaching situations, you don't find that students actually want to like engage with the material more, but this sort of gets to the one of the fundamental advantages of using a bot for educational purposes. It's fun. And like if you remember using, let's see, you know what, Nick, you can stop sharing this and I'll go back to my slides. It's fun, and like those choose your adventure things back when we were kids, you want to go back and follow a different storyline. So a lot of times people go back to the beginning so they can see what it's like from the other person's perspective, which is awesome because it's very rare for people to want to experience a conversation from someone else's view. And they want to experience what it's like to try out different answers. So this is one example of the type of chatbot that I've developed, and kind of the way it's been used for educational purposes. This was the very first one, and I've got to tell you, I've learned a lot since doing it, and kind of this is still an iterative process. So the chatbots have come a long way, but they still have a long way to go, I think. So another example of a chatbot that I consulted on was the David Suzuki Foundation Cli-Mate chatbot. And what I want to show you here is actually not the bot itself, because in many ways, the bot itself is very similar to the bot I did for the New York Times. But I'd like to show you what they kind of did with it, because one of the challenges with a chatbot is, okay, well, you make the bot, but how do you get it into the hands of users? And one of those things is you can deliver it directly if you have an audience. Another way to get it into people's hands is, you know, if you're the New York Times, you can get anybody to use it. But what if you're not the New York Times? What if you're not an organization that has 1 million followers? And so what the David Suzuki Foundation was, they kind of created an advertising campaign. And I'll just show you this quick video.
So I'm absolutely freezing. And I'm thinking to myself, it's so obvious this whole global warming thing is a hoax.
Well, that's not the way global warming normally works. More extreme weather.
Uh-oh, soapbox alert.
Species extinction. Ocean acidification.
You're acidifying my dinner.
Conversations about climate change can bring up all sorts of tough emotions.
Sea level.
Hello, I'm Cli-Mate, your climate conversation coach. There is a better way to have conversations so we can stop fighting and start finding common ground.
What?
Ready to learn?
Am I dead?
Not yet. Ready to begin?
I guess so.
Cli-Mate can help cultivate empathy and keep conversations friendly and positive. Find out more at davidsuzuki.org/climateconversations.
So that actually got a lot of press for the David Suzuki Foundation, and I think points to one of the advantages that you can get for your organization, aside from the inherent advantages of the chatbot itself. You can get some media attention if you do this well, because the novelty is something that attracts people. Because it's fun, it's a new way to think about a difficult topic. It can attract the attention of the press. So let's talk about chatbot development. If you're interested in doing something like this, what is it gonna take? Chatbot has three basic parts. There is a user interface, which is kind of the front-facing design that is what people are going to see when they look at the bot. For the most part, you know, the user interface is designed to look like a Facebook Messenger program, or to look like what you're going to be using on your phone or WhatsApp, because you want people to feel fairly comfortable when they're engaging it. But in addition, another component of the user interface is, where is your bot going to reside? For the New York Times, the bot resides actually on their page. So you open up your New York Times app, and it is in among the articles as you scroll through the newspaper. For the Cli-Mate from David Suzuki Foundation, they decided to actually integrate their bot with Facebook Messenger. So when you go to engage with it, it pops up in the Facebook Messenger program. So one of the things you have to figure out is, where is the bot actually going to reside? And that's going to be part of the user interface. The second component of the chatbot is the software, and that's basically the programming kind of behind the scenes that tells that governs what the interaction, how the interaction is going to happen. And in some ways, you're going to have like probably a bit of a database and a lot and coding. And for that, you need someone with some coding experience, but like I said, it doesn't have to be very sophisticated. And then the heart of the chatbot is the script. Okay. So my suggested timeline on developing a chatbot is that you take all of these three parts and you develop them in parallel. And it's probably going to take an organization about 3 months. And I base this on watching what it took Kaiser to put theirs together, and watching what it took the David Suzuki Foundation to put theirs together. there is kind of a month of planning where you're going to be finding your coders, making design decisions, kind of deciding how long you want the script to be, what are the core concepts you want it to teach. Then the heart of this is going to be the drafting and the coding, and that's really going to take a month to a month and a half, maybe at the outside 2 months. And then finally, you want to save at least a month for kind of editing and debugging to make sure everything is in great shape before it goes live. So the for organizations in the dialogue world, chances are you're going to outsource those first two components of the chatbot, the user interface design and the software design. And for you, the important stuff is going to be really in-house, is going to be developing the script, because let's face it, that's where your knowledge is, that's what your organization is good at. So this is, I just wanted to give you a look at what the script looks like when I write them for the New York Times. I do a lot of color coding, so I can keep track of who's the bot, who's the user, what are the good answers, what are the bad answers, and one of the things you don't realize going through the bot is how much writing is actually involved. A lot of time, you see how dense this is? I often end up with a 20-page script like this, with this kind of density for a New York Times bot. So what are my script writing tips? First thing is start early. It's really easy to underestimate how much work is involved in script writing. And I got to tell you, it's gotten to the point in my household when I get another bot writing assignment that my husband and my children all groan, because they know it means that I am just going to be completely unavailable for weeks and totally stressed out, because it takes so much time. When you start writing the script, write the backbone of the script first. So just begin by writing the correct dialogue. Get that down. What is it that you want that you want the user to learn how to do in a conversation, because that's going to guide everything else that happens. And once you have that correct dialogue down, everything else gets a little easier. The second thing is then you want to fill in the next part of the dialogue. So don't think about the exposition until the dialogue is complete. And you want to think a lot about those wrong answers. It can be really tempting to just throw wrong answers in willy-nilly, but just like you're thinking with the correct dialogue that you're trying to show good behavior, think about with the wrong answers, the problematic behavior, the common real life mistakes that people make when they're engaging in dialogue that run things off track. Don't worry about the answers being too easy. A lot of times when you read the script, you can see, well, I know exactly what the right answer is, so what is the point? And it's important to understand this isn't a test. Almost always people know what the right answer is. And one of the things I've found really interesting in my conversations with people who have used the bot and found it really helpful is that they say, you know, I knew what the right answer was, but I couldn't stop myself from giving the wrong answer. And that is exactly what happens in real life. A lot of times we know we're being too provocative, we know we're being hostile, but we can't stop ourselves from doing it. And so the bot in that sense is really replicating real life experience, and people will still choose the wrong answers even when they know what the right answers are. Next, keep it short. I know I showed you this really long script, but you can't have too many exchanges or people start to get tired. So there are two types of length. There is the length of the script overall, and there's the length of each individual exchange, like what people say in the chat. And so overall length needs to be short just because people have short attention spans. The exchange length needs to be short because you're trying to replicate a text dialogue. Like this isn't supposed to feel like people are writing letters back and forth. It's supposed to feel like you're texting with someone. And part of the fun is that you're communicating the same way you would in a text message to someone. So you want to be brutal with your editing. I recommend using lots of emojis. And what's really funny about this was I did not do that initially, and it was the New York Times. It was like, no, you got to put emojis in it, and they're the ones who have really taught me how to take advantage of that. It's fun. It communicates a lot of the emotional content of the bot without you having to add text to communicate it, and it makes it all feel more authentic. And last but not least, I recommend hiring an editor at some point. You don't have to spend a lot of money on an editor. They don't have, you don't need tons of editing. But when you get to that line editing point where you need someone to tighten it, get rid of excess words and make it as short and pithy as possible, an editor can be incredibly helpful. Writing these bots has probably improved my writing ability more than anything else I've ever done, because I have learned how to get rid of excess words, and that's by being edited by real life editors. So is a chatbot right for you? Let's look at some of the advantages. First off, bots are fun. They just, people love them. They really do. And I think the big reason the New York Times keeps coming back to me to do bots is mostly that they get a lot of clicks, and you know that's worth something in the media world. Second, the bots are good because of the two teaching methods they use: the trial and error, which is like role play, and the exposition. And there aren't many tools that combine both of those. Third, they're online, which is, you know, for digital peace builders is like kind of a dream come true. This is something where you can use to reach people where they are, which is basically everywhere. Fourth, the bots can cut costs if they're used in place of live instruction. So they theoretically, it's a way to automate instruction, which is, you know, why businesses use them. They are an alternative to people. They are relatively inexpensive to develop. Now, I haven't personally had to pay to develop a bot, so take this with a grain of salt. But based on my conversations with others, it's basically costing between $2,500 and $5,000 to develop, and it comes down to you know, the kinds of programmers you're hiring. What everyone tells me across the board is that the design is really simple, and any programmer should be able to do this. It's just a matter of the time put in and design. So once another thing that makes these bots good is that once they're coded, they're basically reusable. Like, all you have to do is switch out the script, but everything else can be used over and over again. And so you invest upfront, and then you have this product long term. And finally, they're scalable. And isn't that the dream? I mean, one bot can teach thousands of people the same concepts. You can reach lots and lots of people simultaneously. What are the disadvantages? Bots are a lot of work. As I said, writing those scripts is hard, and you're going to have to put in a lot of energy. For the most part, you need an established audience. If you don't already have people out there who are waiting to hear from you and learn from you, it's going to be hard to get a bot out there and find people to use it. Third, they are technically still unproven. I mean, research on bots as a training tool, it doesn't exactly exist. It's getting started, and there are people out there who are looking at this from an academic perspective to see how well these bots actually, how much people improve in their dialogue skills after using bots, but we don't really know yet. And then finally, they do require an initial investment of time and money. And, you know, not all of us have that lying around. So in terms of answering the question, does a chatbot make sense from your organization? I think you have to think about 4 things. It does make sense for you probably if you're already doing a lot of dialogue training. Like, this is kind of what your mission is as an organization. You have a large online following or email list. You have the time and money to invest upfront to develop a chatbot, and you can integrate the chatbot into a larger training program. I don't know that because of the questions around how useful a chatbot is, because of the lack of academic work, you know, I don't know that you can build an entire training program on the back of a chatbot. You're probably going to have to do conventional training in addition to having chatbots, and making that maybe, you know, one part of a larger program. So thank you very much. This is great. Hopefully we can now talk a bit, and I can answer questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Karin. That was fantastic. Please post your questions in the chat. And while those are coming in, I have a question for you that I know the answer to, but I think maybe the rest don't.
Yeah.
You are a doctor, you're a political psychiatrist with training in psychology, and that has really informed your work with smart politics on sort of how to talk across political divides. I know that you also have spent thousands of hours online talking to conservatives yourself. So as you are putting together the script for these chatbots, sort of you're drawing on the research and the literature as well as your personal experiences. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. One way to kind of think about it is that the dialogue itself was drawn pretty much directly from my online experiences, my actual conversations, and the didactic portion, the exposition portion, that was much more based on the research and what I know from science.
Yes, that's helpful. And in the chat, I have actually put down a review that Dangerous Speech, which is another organization that has looked at sort of the unique digital aspect of this kind of communication and what works and what doesn't work, that might be unique on the digital platforms for communication. They've done a literature review, bibliography of research that has looked more scientifically on this. So the link is there.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah, so it's a good summary for those of us who are really trying to keep up to date with what people are finding in terms of effective communication online. There's also a question in the chat here from Lily Baldwin. Lily, are you here? Do you want to ask which part? I know she answered some of this already, some of your questions. You want to ask any remaining parts?
Yeah, no, I'm just, I'm kind of curious in terms of, I had a 3-part question. One was just the name of it, the Angry Uncle, and whether or not that was kind of alienating towards men. If you thought about having kind of different bots that people could choose from, if that would be more of an inclusive experience. I guess the second is on the outlet, which you did talk about a little bit, but in terms of, the New York Times, clearly, if you're trying to engage a certain audience or reach a certain audience with this, the New York Times may not necessarily be the most trusted outlet. So did you find or use a diverse group of outlets for this bot? And then third is just really on Mel and detecting any kind of sentiment or behavior change. And thank you, this is super interesting.
What was the third one? Can you say that again?
Oh yeah, it was just on evaluation and seeing, if you could detect any kind of sentiment or behavior change of users. Thank you.
Sure. So on the name, the New York Times came to me with that name, and they were very attached to it. My initial reaction was exactly the same as yours, which was, I don't know that this is entirely the way we want to go with this. But there's only so much you can say to the New York Times there. You definitely want to think about the name part. I mean, I think part of what you're weighing there is this is marketing, right? Like, you want to get the bot into the hands of as many people as possible, so how are you going to capture people's interest and make and teach them, and it's hard. What I can tell you is, using the name Angry Uncle Bot, that was the New York Times knew what they were doing with that. When the original bot came out, the media interest from other outlets was huge. The bot was actually featured, of all places, on Fox and Friends, which was the last place where I would ever think, something I wrote would show up. And they did the bot live on Fox and Friends. Like, they went through it and answered it and all of that. And I don't think they would have done that if it hadn't been called the Angry Uncle Bot. So something to think about. Second, you're right. Obviously, the New York Times is a very liberal audience, and you know, if you want to reach a more diverse group of people, you're gonna have to work at that. Part of my limitation has been that you know, the bot idea originally came from the New York Times. It didn't come from me. They approached me and asked me to write the script. So I've been very dependent upon them in this. If as an organization, I think you have a lot more freedom. And I think that was what the David Suzuki Foundation had. They were able to create a script that appealed to people across the political spectrum and reach people through a variety, you know, through their own mechanisms. But this kind of, again, gets to the problem of delivery. And then in terms of evaluation, yeah, I would love to know what kind of impact it's actually having. All I have are what people have told me. So I have what one of my political science professors used to call anecdata. I don't have you know, data I can analyze, but I have a lot of stories of people coming to me and saying, I used the guide, you know, I used the bot, I followed your advice, and things went better.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Will, you have a question? You want to come online and ask it?
Sure. Sorry for my visual there. Yeah, I guess the question was just, and apologies, I came in a couple of minutes late, so you may have explained this at the outset, Karin, but I was curious about kind of the kind of key element of the bot in terms of, for Angry Uncle at least, was emotional engagement. And I'm thinking about bots that I've seen, say, for a Ministry of Health in a Southeast Asian country that's trying to get engagement on Facebook about vaccine facts. So I wondered, like, what is the key element there to engage, you know, random people and so on in terms of facts? And then my second question was, I was curious about the example again of Angry Uncle, where you're bifurcated into liberal and conservative. And I wondered, you know, given the for organizations thinking about polarized situations or communication, how does one design a little differently to kind of open up conversation rather than chart one down back and forth? So thank you.
Yeah. Let me start with the second one, because that was one of the initial questions. Was if we're trying to teach liberals and conservatives how to talk with each other in a highly polarized environment, are we better off doing one bot that teaches these skills or two bots? And actually, kind of where we ended up was, no, they need two bots, because you need to model what happens when conservatives say things conservatives normally say to liberals, and liberals say things that liberals normally say to conservatives. Part of the strength of the bot was showing the destructiveness of those two forms of engagement. So to see how the conservative bot changes when a liberal starts responding in a provocative and hostile way. So it's kind of counterintuitive that way, and it took us a while to sort of work through that. But the second thing was, we found that people went back and did the bot twice. So you might have a liberal go through it first as a liberal, and then go back through it as a conservative. And it actually had them kind of getting, you know, into the mindset of someone else. Mm-hmm. And so it works out a little differently than you might expect. And maybe that becomes like your initial entry point, and later you get to a place where you're doing a bot where everyone's doing the same thing. But I actually would start there. And then, sorry, the second thing you asked, which was the first, was about like delivering factual information.
Yeah, rather than engagement, a different.
Yeah, so that really is a different kind of bot, because the bot I'm talking about is for teaching dialogue. You're talking about a bot for communicating information, and that has been studied, and there are bots out there, for example, that are doing communication with users using motivational interviewing techniques, which are that's the gold standard for teaching people about vaccination, and those are proving very effective. So you got to distinguish between the dialogue bots and the teaching bots.
Gotcha. Thank you. This is great.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions in the last minute?
I just wanted to jump in. This is Lena from Search. I just wanted to jump in and say, Karin, this has been a really helpful presentation. So well done. And, you know, I think one of the key things as peace builders that we are struggling with is how do we maintain engagement? And for me, there's so many possibilities to use a bot, as you said, with an existing constituency, community, your mediators, the youth people you've worked with, your local government people, to keep the conversation going, which is a little bit of teaching, which is a little bit of reflection, which is a little bit of asking, which is a little bit of reminding them of, remember the resources, here they are. And there's just endless possibilities. And what you've done in this session, Karin, is you've told us how it happens, what it looks like, how you build it. You've demystified it. And I just think there's so many reasons why I see my teams all over the world just creating these WhatsApp groups and Facebook groups and thinking that that's it. And there's just chaos that happens in those groups. There's some fun and good things, but you know, this by putting the parameters here, you can be much more directional, and you can also look at the back end data, which is, you know, for another conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the great things about it that I didn't mention is you can do some A/B testing with these, right? Like I haven't had the potential to do that with the New York Times, but if you're an organization, you know, creating bots, you can see, well, which bot seems to have the best effect on people, which kind are people most likely to share. Like look at what's actually happening out there, get some good data and play with it.
Great ideas. I see Raju, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Lisa. Nice presentation, Karin. Thank you so much. Just a brief question. Is there a way to create a informational bot with a dialogue bot in order to facilitate, say, conversations between conflicting parties where they are able to open up the discussion? And then if there's like a third party data that can be interfaced, that would allow for the information. For example, if somebody was to say something completely incorrect, it could have some options.
Yeah, I'm sure. First off, I think this only scratches the surface of the possibilities. Adding some additional content in like learning content that was topic specific, I think is totally feasible. The second thing is to give you an example of how much space there is for developing this area. I just submitted an application to the Strengthening Democracy Challenge, where I created a a simulated conversation between 3 bots and 1 person online. So it's actually it uses those system, like all of the stuff we talked about here, but it adds another 2 bots where so you have a social modeling component, and you're bringing in another voice of kind of reason and mediation. So there would be like a highly provocative bot on one side, a highly provocative bot on another. You've got the subject who is, you know, theoretically kind of swayable. And then one person one bot who's acting as a mediator and going back and forth and kind of calming everybody down. And I'm hoping that will get selected so we can see what they can actually do the experiments and see whether that has an impact on people. So there are tons of things you can do with this, and we just need to kind of get out there and start testing it.
And that's a great note to end on. Thank you so much. This has been just fantastic, Dr. Tamerius. People should follow you and look at your work, because I'm eager to see this Kaiser chatbot on vaccines and to continue learning from you.
I think it's out there. They sent it out. I think they sent it out to all of their Southern California people and are considering sending it out to all of them.
Okay, if you could send that to me, and then I can share it with our network as a follow-up to this. Thanks so much. Letting everyone go here at the top of the hour. So appreciate your time with us.